My name's Savannah Snyder.
And how old are you? 14.
And I'm her mother, Sarah Snyder.
Alright, so let's start by talking about your life before Gardasil.
I was more artistic. I wasn't into sports, although I did like to go jogging, do exercises whenever the weather was nice. Let's see.
Your mum's an artist as well, so you were both saying that you had plans to join a gym together.
We were going to join a gym right about the time that she got her 7th grade vaccines. And
you both live together on your own?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the day that this changed your life forever.
I went in for my 7th grade physical, and a few nurses walked in with the prepping stuff and the vaccines, and
You were there with your mother?
yeah. And of course we thought it was a bit strange. There were more than a few nurses in there along with the doctor, but tried to dismiss it. They turned around, had you sign a paper, and they gave me my shots in my left thigh, and the last one hurt really bad. It felt like they were injecting fire in my leg, and I started getting these purple dots around the injection site. And I felt extremely sick for the rest of the day. The doctor told us, oh, it's normal for that to happen. It's just because you're getting shots in general. And we tried dismissing it.
Do you know exactly what shots you got that day?
I know she
I don't remember all of them.
She received a DTaP, and she received a couple other boosters. I'm not sure which ones offhand she received, but they were the typical 7th grade required shots. And I had asked the nurses and the doctor to only administer the required shots. I didn't want her getting any extra shots if she didn't need it and it wasn't required.
So did you know she was about to have the Gardasil vaccine?
No, I told them not to, because my mom had warned me about the Gardasil, and I told them I wanted to wait because I wanted to do further research first before getting the Gardasil administered, because they kept pushing it, and I said, I'm not prepared, I'm not very familiar with this one. And I had assumed that the pharmaceutical companies had done extensive research on the others, since if they're required, you expect it to be, you expect that the companies have done years and years of research and have deemed it safe. So you believe your doctor. Every parent believes their doctor. We're all trying to do the right thing.
So just to make it absolutely crystal clear here, you specifically asked her on that day not to be given the Gardasil vaccine?
Yes, I told them I did not want her to have it that day. I wanted to research it, and I would come back if I decided that she needed it or if she wanted it. So I told them no, and when the 3 nurses came into the room, 2 nurses were prepping her, and throughout her childhood vaccines, there was always 1 or 2 nurses, never a third. And it was we had been waiting in the room for half an hour. 3 nurses came into the room. They seemed like they were in a huge hurry. 2 nurses were prepping her, and 1 nurse turned around and handed me a piece of paper, but only after her skin had been prepped on her legs for the vaccines, And all 3 nurses were sitting there staring at me, and they said, "Oh, you need to sign that before we can do this." And I said, "And this is only for the required vaccines for her 7th grade shots, right?" And they said yes. So I signed it because I didn't feel I had enough time to read the fine print of everything that they'd put down. And they administered the vaccines, and the last one made her yell because it was so painful. And the next thing I know, one of the nurses turns around and says, "Okay, she's going to have to come back in 2 months for her next Gardasil vaccine." And I said, "Oh no, that's the one I told you that she's not getting." She goes, "Oh, well, I just gave that to her. That was the last shot." And that was the one that she yelped on, and they said, "That's normal." And I said, "But that's the one I didn't want her to have." And she said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." But the nurses turned around and they left the room immediately. We sat in the room for about a half an hour. No nurses came in, and they told us that we had to wait. And so we waited in the room, and she was hurting. She started to get a headache, and I was upset, but I didn't want to scare her, so I didn't make as big of an ordeal as I wanted to, because I was so upset that they had made such a mistake. But I was thinking, well, what are the odds? What are the odds of her getting an adverse reaction to this vaccine? Since it's 1 in a million or whatever numbers they throw out. And she had a headache. She felt weak. She almost fainted. The blood rushed out of her face. I basically had to help carry her back to our truck. And she had purple dots, petechial hemorrhaging on her leg, that started the next day. And there were a whole bunch of little purple dots, purple and red dots. And she had a fever, and within 2 days she had pneumonia, and she kept getting sick. Over the next 8 weeks, she came down with pneumonia, bronchitis, 2 ear infections, a sinus infection, a throat infection, and constant thrush. And her immune system was compromised. After about that 8-week period, I took her to a neurologist because she started having times where she would just blank out and stare off into space, and she was unresponsive. And she wouldn't respond to her name. She would be walking, and she would literally walk into a wall, and it scared me because that's not her. And she's more laid back. She's not an attention getter at all. And she would walk into a wall and just fall flat. I mean, she would hit the ground hard. And so I wanted to see what happened. And I started doing this research on the Gardasil and started realizing so many of her symptoms were identical to so many stories. She said the pain in the back of her head, which it started out as headaches, but it turned into migraines very quickly. She was sleeping anywhere from 12 to 21 hours a day for 2 months. She had a constant fever for 5 weeks of 102 to 103 degrees. And the seizures after a few months went from small seizures to grand mal seizures. And she wasn't having a whole bunch of them, but they were very apparent when they hit her, because she would kind of fall out of consciousness and seem to be staring off into space, and I had to get her into a sitting position because I knew when they were starting to come. She's been hospitalized 9 times in 26 months.
Hospitalized for what?
For extreme pain that is uncontrollable.
Where is your pain when you have this?
Absolutely everywhere. My joints, my spine, my head especially, and in some muscles. And it's just uncontrollable.
And originally she said that she felt like she was shot in the back of the head, at the nape of her neck, where her head meets the top of her spine. She felt like she was shot with a bullet, and that the pain branched forward. She explained it as like the legs of a spider reaching forward through her skull. And it went all the way forward. And the pain goes from the very top of her spine all the way through the bottom of her spine. And the pain has been so bad that there have been nights where she has woken up and told me, "Mom, I'm so sorry, but I'm dying." And shortly thereafter, we adopted a dog as a therapy dog because I was willing to do anything to keep her mind off of the pain and hold on to hope. And dogs are very therapeutic. Animals are very therapeutic. But we've had many people in our family and friend group that have thought that this is all in her head, that she's exaggerating. And the lack of support is detrimental for especially a girl of her age. We've met so many wonderful people through Facebook that have been through the same injuries, and it has helped me to stay sane because we know we're not alone. But we want to get the word out there that this vaccine is not safe. It injures way more than the CDC says it does. We saw injuries immediately, but they progressively got worse over several months. After about 6 months, we were referred by 5 specialists here in Omaha to go to the Mayo Clinic. And we went up to the Mayo Clinic, and she was seen, and she kept getting abnormal EEGs. Of course, that goes along with the seizures. And she had another EEG at the Mayo Clinic, and that also came back abnormal, of course. And they diagnosed her with POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And they eventually, through my own research, I felt that she might have some underlying issue that the Gardasil could have triggered. And she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's encephalopathy and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome type 3. She had had 0 symptoms. That's a connective tissue disorder, but she didn't have the hypermobility, she didn't have the joint pain, she had never complained of a headache, had never complained of a backache, had never complained of fainting or walking into walls. She was 100% healthy. She had 0 problems, and it progressively got worse. And through being hospitalized so many times, she's on so many medications, and we try to do natural therapies now to try and build her immune system naturally in hopes to get her off of the pharmaceutical drugs. And
what are the drugs for? The seizures and...
For seizures, most of them are for pain, because her pain was to the point where she couldn't function, she couldn't speak, she couldn't go to school. When she went to school, she could barely walk. She gets brain fog to where her attention span will just drop off out of nowhere, so she was unable to study.
And what is this here?
This is an NJ2.
What it does is basically it goes up my nose and near my throat, and it goes past my stomach into my jejunum, or the first part of the small intestine, because my stomach is completely paralyzed.
Your stomach is paralyzed?
Yes. For the past year, she has had symptoms of stomach pain and pain in her ovary and uterus area, and I've taken her in for several pelvic exams just to check and see if she's got any cysts, or see if there's something we need to address. And eventually I contacted a GI doctor who did a gastric emptying study where they fed her food and basically took pictures over a 4-hour period and found out that 71% of the food was left in her stomach after 4 hours when there should be 0 to 10%, which means that her stomach was cramping trying to push the food, but it was unsuccessful. So she lost weight. She went from 134 pounds down to 102 pounds. They did blood work and found out she was severely malnourished, even though she was eating very healthy foods. Her stomach wasn't absorbing basically anything, and she was very sick. And about 4, maybe 5 weeks ago, she was hospitalized for 9 days, and they placed the NJ tube, and she's on a feed for 16 hours a day, and that helps her to gain weight back, which she has gained about 6 pounds back, which is fantastic. And they're basically trying to make sure that she's getting the nutrients that she needs and that her weight doesn't continue to go down, because she dropped from 134 pounds down to 102 pounds in a almost 3-month period, and I was concerned, of course. And so the NJ tube has been helping as far as the weight gain, but she still, of course, has the spine pain and the headaches.
Now, have you been back to the nurses that made the mistake of giving?
Yes, we changed doctors, and from now on I'm very hesitant with anything that goes into her. I do extensive research on every medication that goes into her, and I don't allow any more than one new medication at a time. So if she has an adverse reaction to something else, I want to know what the culprit is. But she's got medications that get rid of the migraines because they were constant. She's got medications that help with the spine pain. She takes a large dose of a medication that helps with how the brain processes pain, and those medications have helped. And
what's a typical day like for you since having Gardasil? What has this vaccine taken away from you?
I can't walk without no assistance. I either have to have a cane or walker, or have her help me with an arm. My pain is never below a 6.
Are you in pain now?
Yeah. It never goes away. I don't have as much energy as I used to. I have tons of symptoms, so sometimes I'll be extremely nauseous, or sometimes the pain will just be really bad.
And we also brought before and after photos.
Have you got them now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see them?
This is 1 week before the shots.
1 week before the shot.
1 week. This is 2 months before the shots. All these before photos
How
are
often
from
do you
Senior.
see that beautiful smile on your daughter now, since the Gardasil?
Very seldom. She still smiles, and she's still very good at trying to be normal. And she does a fantastic job. But it just isn't the same.
Savannah is so sorry this happened to you. There's just no words.
And this is after.
Okay, after the vaccine.
She was on a huge amount of steroids and was getting IVIG treatments for several months every week at the infusion center.
Has any doctor at any time said, yes, the Gardasil did this?
Yes.
And we have to be a bit careful here because you're going through a court hearing,
Yes.
quite rightly.
And I won't mention which hospitals or which doctors, but yes. And I've asked them to put it in writing, and they apologized and told me that they cannot put it in writing because it could interfere with their line of work.
Whatever. Honestly, these people, this is what's wrong with everything, is the people that won't do the right thing.
It was nice to get the acknowledgement, but it's hard when it's behind closed doors and you don't have anybody putting it on paper to prove that there is something wrong. This is
What's
her
this?
blood pressure and heart rate.
I don't know if you can see that.
This was last summer before she lost all the weight, and that's after all the steroids.
There's that smile of yours.
She has such a beautiful smile.
You really do. You're a very beautiful young woman.
And this one was a hard photo to take. But people need to see that this pain is not fake. This is very real. This is very real. This was a month ago. And this was after her last ER visit.
What's happening now?
She had passed out. I had caught her and was able to lay her on the ground. And she needed about 10 minutes to recover. I only took the picture for proof. It broke my heart to take that picture. But I feel people need to see that's not normal.
Yeah, people, this is Gardasil.
That is what Gardasil will do to your child. And it's Russian roulette. You never know if they're going to have... I know people that have had the vaccine and had no problems. But I've met so many that have had an adverse reaction. And this is from one. This is from the first vaccine. out of the course of 3 shots. And once that shot is given, there is no going back. You cannot take it out. And that's...
What do you say to other young girls and parents of those young girls about Gardasil?
Do not get it. And if you have to, you've got to just at least research and not just look at what the CDC says. Look at other people's reviews on it, real people, because we have nothing to gain from telling you.
Savannah, you have so much love coming in right now for you. So many people are going to be praying for you. So many people want you to know how much they love you. And thank you for talking about what happened, and they're so sorry that this happened to you. See all those hearts? See that? That is for you. That's them telling you how much you are loved. And you, Mama. And you're educating. Look, someone just said, what is Gardasil? So that's people coming on, they're hearing your story. We love you, love you. Look at that. So I'm going to replay all that to you, but literally, this is from Periscope. Hearts are still coming in, so we'll replay this for you. You'll be able to see how much you're loved by everybody and how sorry everyone is. Thank you for telling your story, and we'll pray like crazy for your recovery.
Okay. I've got the umbrella.
I'll clean it.
So 4325.
4325 is your number. Show me where you'd like it and I'll clean it for you.
perfect.
Another consequence of vaccine injury is that you've had to give up your job, haven't you?
Yes.
So you are now living just off disability benefit.
Yes.
This is the real consequence of vaccine injury, is that it doesn't just affect one life, it drastically affects lives.
It drastically,
around.
it turned our life upside down.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out today to
Thank you.
tell your story, and everyone loves you.